Karen. I'll read the official citation. Karen has a number of years' experience in leadership development, having worked with clients such as British Airways, Barclays Bank, Pizza Express, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and the Home Office. And in 2009, she joined the business school here as one of the first business schools in the UK to sign up to the UN Principles for Responsible Management Education. Since then, she's conducted research and produced academic and practitioner publications in the area of responsible leadership development, spirituality in leadership, and the role of business schools in society. Karen's been interviewed on TV and the radio, all for good reasons, concerning the dynamics leading to irresponsible leadership in banks, and is also interested in the role played by spirituality in the development of responsible leaders. And she currently heads up the Centre for Responsible Management here at Winchester. And today, she's going to speak to us on the theme Leadership, Love, and the Transformation of Business. Karen,
thank you very much, Phil. Thanks. So first of all, I'd like to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to address your annual general meeting. So that was a wonderful opportunity for me because it enabled me to get some time to focus my thoughts on an area which is of great interest to me. So I'm hoping that today I'll offer you some ideas, but I'm doing so as a provocation and as a stimulation for conversation and thought, which we can continue both after the lecture and subsequently as opportunity provides. So we are all have something to contribute in this arena. As I said, all I'm doing is providing a particular perspective, but many of you will be more experts in some of these things than I certainly am. So let's see how it unfolds. And as I said, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. So we're going to start, actually, since we're all Christians in this space, and I haven't had the opportunity to do this before, with a story from the Bible, which I'm going to read. Okay? Jesus anointed by a sinful woman. When one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, so she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. As she stood behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner." So after challenging the Pharisee, whose name is Simon, Jesus turned to the woman and said to Simon, I'll give a little gap here and you can think in your head, what do you remember from the story? Okay. So Jesus said to Simon, he said, "Do you see this woman? Do you see this woman?" The implication is that he doesn't see this woman at all because he has a filter of his own beliefs, attitudes, and experiences and judgments. So, let's skip, shall we? Let's go 2,000 years ahead. And I'm going to read an excerpt from one of my MBA students' essays. This is a senior guy in business. He's at the forefront of the Industrial Revolution. His job is process management and lean, and essentially his role is to systematize and align the processes in businesses in order to help them introduce artificial intelligence and get rid of thousands and thousands of jobs. And he is working for one of the biggest global corporates in the world. Okay? And this is part of his essay on leadership. "I believe my style of leadership is closely aligned with a combination of Hoshin Kanri in recognizing areas requiring breakthrough process and Kaizen team functionality, leading systematic improvement activities with future development of team productivity and automation aligned with a future vision of adapting to change whilst the focus remains on the customer. How do I measure continuous improvement expected to drive greater output from the team through greater automation, less process gaps, better cultural alignment, trust, belief, common sense being applied whilst tracking energy levels in the team to gauge motivation of the team and the individuals? How do I measure and encourage major changes needed in the team's operating model to being more proactive to solutions, products and services through freedom, training, confidence, trust, communication and collaboration, without feeling threatened by the change, whilst encouraging internal competition in the team and between cross-functional teams. So my question to him was, do you see your people? Do you see your people? And we had a chat afterwards. And I said to him, how does your company regard its people? And he said to me, quite shockingly, Karen, they are minions, and so am I. That's exactly what he said. So I would suggest that business finds it quite difficult to see people. So let's move on, shall we? Now we're going to the World Economic Forum in Davos. And for the last 2 years, the World Economic Forum, which is where business leaders and politicians come together to discuss the challenges facing the world, the last couple of years they've been talking about the crisis in leadership. And this year they made a call for more responsive and responsible leaders in order to address the challenges that some of the challenges I've listed up there. It's interesting, isn't it, that word responsive. Responsive to whom, I would ask. Responsive and responsible leadership. And people who do these things have been looking at the changes that we face as a society, as a global society, and the rate of change that we are going through at this particular point in time is unparalleled in human history. Absolutely unparalleled. So when people say, oh yes, it's just another industrial revolution, sort of yes it is, but sort of no it isn't. Because actually some of the challenges we face here are existential in nature, climate change for example, getting enough resources to feed 9 billion people on the planet, and also the rate of change, as I said, has never been experienced in the whole of human history. So we are facing significant challenge and significant changes, particularly obviously with the fourth industrial revolution, where we will be getting rid of millions and millions of jobs. What role then do businesses play in our society? When essentially fewer and fewer and fewer people will be working within businesses, and if we're not careful, they will be sucking resources out of those businesses into a very small elite of people, which is still happening to this very day. So at that particular conference this year, Klaus Schwab, who is the founder of the Davos, and he also has written a lot on the fourth industrial revolution, said, if we recognise that we are all part of a global community, then we have to overcome our prejudices, our filters, and work together in a practical fashion whilst genuinely respecting each other's identity and integrity. So crossing all these boundaries and experiences and worldviews and filters and belief systems, we have to genuinely respect each other's identity and dignity. And business, to be honest with you, does not have a great track record in this particular field, particularly since, say, the 2000s, when we've had WorldCom and Enron, and streams and streams and streams of scandals. Businesses tend to regard human beings as means to an end. Businesses tend to see human beings as resources, or the latest term is talent. How are you managing your talent? Not how are you managing Jill and Chloe and Sophie, but your talent. It's your talent. And we can see here, can't we, that there are just, I'm going to put loads and loads and loads of scandals up on this slide, actually, of how businesses are disregarding the humanity of people, whether they are of their staff and Sports Direct. We've all heard the scandal Sports Direct, the people who are chained to the desk, as it were, and one woman who gave birth to a child in the toilet. We've got here, I Quit, that was the scandal where the 17 Chinese young people working in a factory creating iPads for Apple committed suicide, and Steve Jobs said it's nothing to do with me. Right way through to Martin Shkreli there, who essentially bought the rights to a particular AIDS drug, and as soon as he bought those rights, he pushed the price up by 5,000%, so that those AIDS patients, most of those being in developing countries, could no longer afford to buy the drug. We tend to be guilty of not seeing human beings as sacred. We see them as part of our machinery. part of our business, part of the machine, as cogs in a wheel. We don't see people as being made in God's image. And that, I think, and this is a challenge to all of you here and all of us here, that is something that we have to contribute to this debate, which is currently taking place right now. What can we bring to this important conversation? And this is James Smith. He was an advisor to Jimmy Carter. He said something very interesting because he's looking at the problem of climate change. And what he said is, I used to think that the top global environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that with 30 years of good science, technology, if you like, we could address these problems, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy, and to deal with these we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. We scientists don't know how to do that. We need the help of religious leaders. So this is a challenge, really, as I said, for all of us. We need to step up to the mark because our world needs us. And if we don't have our voices in that conversation, then more and more people will be seen simply as means to an end. So, what am I going to do today? I'm going to just quickly discuss what is love. Do we need to use the L word at all, I wonder? Why don't we just use empathy or compassion or spiritual intelligence or emotional intelligence, that's used, or mindfulness, everyone uses that. A brief word about leadership and power. A couple of examples of businesses that are run on love. This is not just pie in the sky, this is an important conversation and there are examples that we look to. And what can we do to help ourselves and those we are here to serve? To see the other, to love the other. Which I thought, we need to have a chat about. So what might we mean by love in this context? Well, for a start, this is where you are the experts rather than me. So I'm talking about agape. And I'm not a theologian, okay? So, but essentially, obviously, love originates from God or Christ for mankind. It's sacrificial, servant-orientated, unconditional, and unfiltered by human needs. So we know that that is extremely tough and extremely difficult to do, even if it's possible for us as human beings to really manifest even a sparkling glimpse of God's love for us. So it's a journey and it's a challenge that we need to embrace. And by the way, I've been talking to business leaders about some of these topics before the lecture today, and people don't sort of recoil in horror, they are intrigued by it. They are intrigued by this notion of love in business. How can we do that if it is even possible? Now I'm going to draw on business concepts, and Schwartz, he's a psychologist, he identified, we're going to come back to him later, but he identified two elements, if you like, of love. One he called universalism, which is love for humankind as a whole, and the other is benevolence, which is love for neighbour, which is an interesting differentiation. And his work actually is identifying human motivations. So there is a certain element of personality involved in this. There is a genetic element. Some people are born more prone to love, and some people are born perhaps slightly less prone to love. And so we're really looking at those who are less prone to love. How do we go on that journey? How do we embrace agape? How do we embrace universalism and benevolence? Well, maybe it's not necessarily the thing that comes most naturally to us. And we're going to come back to that question later. Finally, I like Rogers, who is the seminal thinker and writer in counselling theory. He calls it unconditional positive regard. So it's not a fluffy, emotional thing we're talking about here. It is a practice and it is a discipline. And it can be tough. So it is not fluffy and emotional, being nice to people. It is a practice and a discipline, and we need to continue to learn it. Sorry about the expression. Okay. So why not mindfulness? Why use the L word? Why not mindfulness is all the rage. For those of you who like these kind of things, have you come across the Enneagram? Has anyone come across the Enneagram? It's a great little, yeah. So it's a great little tool, and what you can do is it monitors uses of certain words over a period of time. Back through 1800, right the way through to 2008, it doesn't go beyond 2008. So I put mindfulness in the Enneagram, and this is what I got. So it's all polygon. So there's a little slight upward angle there at 1950, and 1972 it's sort of quite a steep jump there. And in 1984, it's gone absolutely through the roof. And most companies now, including our own organisation as well, offer mindfulness courses and Tai Chi and spirituality in the workplace and space for reflection. Often you don't see Christian responses to this. It's all mindfulness, and wherever you go, I'm sure you all have experience. I went to a party, a wedding on Saturday. I had about 3 or 4 different conversations with people, and they were all telling me about their mindfulness practice. So everybody's doing mindfulness. So why not do mindfulness? Well, I'll come back to that in a minute. Why not just keep focusing on mindfulness? It's not the same stuff. Okay. Why not focus on empathy? Empathy is a very, very powerful force, there's no doubt about that. So there are lots of different definitions of empathy. This one from Bloom here is very interesting. The act of coming to experience the world as you think someone else does. There are lots of different elements to empathy, but it's essentially being able to experience the feelings and thoughts that other people are going through. That is the function of empathy. And as I said, it's a very powerful force, and no doubt are not criticising it. So empathy can lead to great pro-social behaviour, it can lead to benevolence, it can lead to universalism, it can lead to love. There's a little experiment there with the prisoner's dilemma. Who's heard of the prisoner's dilemma? Okay, it's a little game you play. So you have one person over here who is not in contact with this person over there, and they can play 2 cards. You can either play a compete card or a collaborate card. And they did a little experiment. These experiments are quite fun, aren't they? And so you don't know what the other person's going to play. So if you play a compete card and the other person plays a compete card, you get £5 each. Yeah? If you play a collaborate card and the other person plays a collaborate card, you get £10 each. But if you play a compete card and the other person plays a collaborate card, you get £25 and the other person gets 0. And it's quite a fun game. It looks about collaboration, cooperation, and how you build trust. And in this particular experiment, they informed one of the players beforehand that their partner had played a compete card. So they knew there was a compete card there. And so you have a choice there of either doing a compete card as well, in which case you both get £5, or she can play a collaborate card, and this person will get £25, and this person will get 0. Now, in the control position, no one played a collaborate card, absolutely no one. So they both went away with £5, which is the logical thing to do. But they induced empathy in the next version of the experiment, and a large proportion of people played the collaborate card, which meant that their opponent got £25 and they got 0. And essentially what they were saying here in this experiment, that empathy actually induces that self-sacrificial behaviour which we associate, if you like, with love.
Beautiful loser.
Beautiful loser, that's right, exactly. Bringing this more up to date, there's a very interesting experiment being conducted with relation to the Israelis. Israeli-Palestinian conflict. They're using virtual reality helmets. It's the Israelis who are participating in this. And they have Jamal, who is a virtual reality character, and the Israeli participants in the experiment observed Jamal and Jamal's day on the other side of the wall. And they found that actually observing Jamal in virtual reality increases levels of empathy across this enmity, across this divide. And they've even found that they can actually make Jamal mirror the movements of the Israeli observer, and the more that Jamal, I don't know how they do this by the way, mirrors them, the more the empathy goes up. So it's a very, very powerful force, empathy. However, there's been a lot of criticism about it. And those of you who are interested, I recommend Bloom's book Against Empathy. Let's give you an example. Many of you will know Charlie, who is the poor boy baby who has suffered this rare genetic disability, and he's living on a life support system at the moment, and his parents are basically wanting to take him to the US for this experimental drug treatment. And the courts have said no. The courts have said let Charlie die in peace and in dignity. He's very severely brain damaged, which I hadn't realised that before. So even if he does go over there for the genetic treatment, he will never be able to function effectively as a human being. And the parents have raised £1.2 million for this genetic treatment. which is great. You know, that is a great demonstration of empathy. However, empathy can be irrational, because the cost of saving Charlie would be £1.2 million. However, the cost of saving a whole life in a malarial district in Africa is 2,607, which simply is a lifetime supply of mosquito nets. That's what it is, very low tech, a lifetime supply of mosquito nets. Would those people who contributed to Charlie's treatment have contributed to saving one life in Africa, or giving the same money they've given to Charlie to the life in Africa? And the findings are no, they wouldn't. Because we are limited. Empathy is a limited emotion. So, we empathise more with people who are like us. We empathise with the parents of Charlie, because it could be us. We empathise with Madeleine McCann, because she comes from, you know, I identify with those parents. We could have lost that child. She looks more like an English person or a British person than someone who's far away from us. We empathise with people who are like us. We empathise more easily with one person, Charlie, than we do with groups and groups of people. Young children, for example, in refugee camps. So you see the two pictures there. We're more liable to empathise with Madeleine in this church here, in this chapel here, than we are to empathise with those masses of children. We often see them, don't we? Plus a whole big house of thousands of children in refugee camps. We empathise subjectively and illogically, which is the Charlie case. So we'll empathise with one person there, we'll give our money to this cause, when actually, if we thought about it, we could give the same money and achieve a much better output in terms of life-saving abilities. And empathy can be a source of violence, interestingly. They have found that if we empathise with someone, it's much more easy to provoke us to violence, to protect the person that we're empathising with. So there are some arguments against empathy, and this is a debate that's just about kicking off right about now, actually. So, if empathy is not really up to the task, what about compassion? Now, I want you to look at this picture here, and I want you to self-monitor, and what feelings does this picture trigger in you? Okay, now I'd like you to talk to your neighbour and discuss what feelings does this trigger in you. Another picture. Okay, same question.
That's evokes tenderness, really.
Okay, so discuss with your neighbour. This comes from an experiment that some marketing people have been doing. Marketing is very interested in love because they want us to love their products. They want to manipulate love in order to gain profit. So there is an interesting discussion going on about love in the marketing space. So this came from a marketing journal article that I came across. And what they were trying to do is to find out the impact of love on our giving behaviour. So they had a group of people and they asked these people to donate some money to charities, and they listed all the various charities they could donate to. And first of all, they triggered the emotion which is intended to be triggered by this, which is compassion. Okay, compassion. It's not exactly the same picture that's in their article, I couldn't reproduce it, but it's a similar type of thing. And when people were triggered with compassion, what they did was they donated to charities either local to them or maybe on a national level, say the children on a national level, UK or whatever. However, when they triggered the former picture, which is intended to trigger, there it is.
Relief.
Relief. Relief.
It's like a sleep.
Yes, not quite. It was intended to trigger love, okay. They found that people donated to charities further away. So they donated to charities in far-flung places, Africa, India, Asia, etc. So what the authors concluded was that actually love triggers not only benevolence, you know, love for neighbour, but universalism, which is more difficult, love for the distant other, who we don't tend to empathise with so easily. So love broadens, if you like, that circle of concern that empathy and compassion does not. Love is a unique emotion in that respect, absolutely unique. And what they found also with compassion is that love is a pure emotion. I don't know if you experience this yourself, but my response was, oh. Mine wasn't really that. I forgot. And there's no cognitive component in that. There's no judgment. There's no, oh, what's going on here, It's pure love. Whereas with compassion, what they found was that there's a more mixture of emotions that were triggered. Certainly tenderness, certainly kindness, certainly empathy, but also pain. So those, you know, empathy is the ability to, or compassion also is the ability to feel, to suffer with. Compassion means suffering with. So you feel pain, and then you also start cognitively analysing the situation. What's going on? How can I help? What should I do? Why are they like that? And you go with your mind as well. So actually compassion is a less of a pure emotion than love is. As soon as you start getting this going on in the head, that's when likely the judgments come through. If he knew who this woman was, he wouldn't be allowing her to do that type of thing. She's a prostitute, blah, blah, blah. That's when the cognitive appraisals come in. But love is, And my theory is, I think the reason that little kitten stories are so popular on the web and on YouTube and on Facebook is because it's a similar response. You see a little kitten going to them playing around, and we go, oh, it's probably love. And we like that feeling. It's a nice feeling, isn't it? So what they concluded was, love as a trait and a momentary emotion is unique among positive emotions and fostering connectedness that other positive emotions, compassion and hope and pride, do not, and broadening behaviour in a way that other connected emotions, compassion, do not. Love is unique. Love is unique. Of course, Christ did this many years ago. He didn't need social psychology experiments to show it, did he? So, quickly, because I've got to get the discussion started, there is examples of companies that use love. Okay, so we've got 100 best companies to work for, and they use measures that we would associate with universalism and benevolence, and they do very extensive surveys of the company's staff, and they list these 100 best companies to work for, and what they found is that they consistently score high on measures of trustworthiness and finish first in profitability, revenue growth, stock performance and other key business measures, which is not why people necessarily do it. It shouldn't be why they necessarily do it, but actually love outperforms those businesses that do not embrace love as part of their values and philosophy. And I've got a couple of examples there, those of you who are interested. Timpson, John Timpson came down to speak to us recently in Winchester. I was thrilled when I invited him, and he said yes. They are the high street shoe repairer and key cutter they use love very much. He cannot stop talking about his people. An example is that they specifically and consciously employ ex-offenders. And apparently, giving an ex-offender a job is the thing that's most likely to prevent reoffending. Yes, absolutely, yeah. And employees, he gives them their birthdays off. He buys villas all over Europe so that his employees can all use it for free. They have to pay to get out there, but they can free. He's just an amazing, wonderful man, actually, John Timpson, and it's just inspiring to hear him talk. Patagonia is another amazingly inspiring company. Yvonne Schunard is the owner. He has a passionate love for the environment, and a passionate love for the planet, and a passionate love for his people. And he first got on this journey, as it were, of love when he discovered that his people were suffering illnesses, and he realised that the reason they were suffering illnesses was because of the cotton that was used in making his outdoor clothing, which is what Patagonia does, they make outdoor clothing, was impregnated with chemicals, and they were all suffering from the effects of those chemicals. And then he started to basically go down the organic cotton line, and it's just an amazing story. If you're interested, read the book Let My People Go Surfing by Yvonne Schunard. Love it. So, you know, this is not pie in the sky, this works. This does work. But we have a problem, and the problem is twofold. The Blueprint for Better Business, again, just go online and have a look at it. That's a religious, you probably know, religious, sort of predominantly Catholic movement to try and bring this spiritual voice, if you like, the faith voice into the business space, and they're doing, you know, quite well on that. This is the key. This is Schwartz again. And he has identified 10 core human motivators. And he's pictured them in this way in order to show that if we are attracted by some motivators, we tend to be less attracted by other motivators. And lo and behold, what do you find? Universal and benevolence, which is what we would call love, tends to be opposite to achievement and power. So this raises two questions, because what we find, and I could do another lecture on this, in organisations, the people who get to the top generally tend not to be, more hierarchical the organisation, the more true this is, the people who get to the top tend not to be the most competent, but those who are actually more motivated by power. So the more motivated by power you are, the more likely you are to get to the top. So that means many of our organisations will be led by power-orientated people who are less attracted to love. So that is a challenge, I think, for us. It's also a challenge for us because those who are more attracted to love tend to be less attracted to power and achievement. So therefore, those of us who, again, feel that those values are very, very important might be rather suspicious of power, might be rather suspicious of the egotism maybe involved in achievement, might be. You know, this is just generally speaking, it could be the case. And so therefore, if we are to speak into that space, we need to address and embrace the values of achievement and power, I would suggest. We need to be putting ourselves forward. We need to step up to the mark. We need to be taking leadership. And I'm going to leave you with a quote from Martin Luther King, which I love. Power properly understood is nothing but the ability to achieve purpose. It is the strength required to bring about social, political, and economic change. And one of the great problems of history is that the concepts of love and power have usually been contrasted as opposites, polar opposites, so that love is identified with the resignation of power, and power with the denial of love. Now, we've got to get this thing right. What we need to realise is that power without love is reckless and abusive. And love without power is sentimental and anemic. It is precisely this collision of immoral power with powerless morality which constitutes the major crisis of our time. And he was speaking in the 1960s, and I would suggest that the same crisis is characteristic of our times today. So I shall leave you with that, and really open it up to you in terms of any questions you want to ask. I mean, I have got a further slide in terms of what we can do.